For this week's meal prep, I made sourdough bread and granola with almonds and dried cranberries. I made a tofu ricotta and a tomato sauce. I also made a kitchen sink casserole topped with dill mashed potatoes, and I made some enchiladas, and I also preserved some of the ginger that we got in bulk. And I made yet another attempt at a blood orange oil cake.
Two things I would most commonly probably do to start with on the weekend would be making granola for the week and also at least one loaf of bread. And I've tried a few different ways of doing it lately because I did let my starter die. I feel very sad about that, but I did let my sourdough starter die ages ago, and so then I was trying different ways of making bread, including using traditional yeast, which I actually really love working with, but I don't like the taste as much. I found it's been a lot more dense, but also there's just like, it's not bad, it still tastes good, but I can kind of taste that yeasty taste, and I can definitely smell that when I'm making it and when the bread is rising and even kind of when it's baking. So not a huge fan. I like it, it's just not my favorite. And somebody gave me recently a low carb starter, and I found that really challenging to keep going. It was fed with oat fiber, yeah, and vital wheat gluten. And it made a very spongy starter, but also I found that hard to work with. Maybe just because I'm not used to it, but it wasn't doing like the sourdough big bubbly overflow that I'm used to. Anyways, then I received as a gift some sourdough starter, so I have restarted doing that, and this starter has been on hold for a few days in the fridge. I already made some bread with it, but before I make more bread with it, I definitely need to feed her and set her aside for a while so she can get bubbly and ready for baking.
As I said, my sourdough starter really needed feeding, so I did that before I started all of the meal prep so that it would have a couple of hours to get nice and bubbly and ready to make bread out of. I think that technically the ratio for feeding your starter is equal parts starter. Well, I imagine there's different things that you can do, but normally it's equal parts starter, filtered water, and flour. As you can see, I'm not actually measuring because I'm kind of a cowboy in the kitchen, but it's roughly equal parts in weight, for example. So if you had 100 grams of starter, you would add 100 grams of water and 100 grams of flour. I'll actually do a sourdough 101 video at some point, but this is just to give you a rough idea. Once my starter was fed, I moved on to the actual meal prep part. The next thing I wanted to get started right away so that it would have a few hours to simmer on the stove was the tomato sauce. So I just simmered some garlic and onions, and I added some dried and fresh herbs as well as some tomato pesto that I had in the house, and some tomato paste, a bit of salt and tomato puree, and then also some diced tomatoes and bay leaves. And I just put that on the stove and let it simmer while I did everything else. I made a granola, as I said, which I make out of whole rolled oats and some coconut flakes, and I throw in seeds, usually any seeds, pumpkin, sesame, chia, flax, it's up to you. There's actually a recipe on sweetvegan.net if you actually want precise measurements, but I make it different pretty much every single time. And if you want to watch me do it slowly, bit by bit, one of the first few YouTube videos that I recorded was I think I like a what I eat for breakfast video, and one of the recipes that I share with you is a granola also. But anyway, to this one I added sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, sliced almonds, and dried cranberries, and cinnamon. And I melted some coconut oil and I added some almond butter and tahini and maple syrup and a bit of vanilla. And I just whisked that all together. Then I mixed the granola up until it was really well coated, and I popped it in the oven at 315 for 15 minutes. And then after about 10 or 15 minutes, I gave it a little stir and popped it back in for another 10 minutes. And then I took it out and let it cool completely and get rid of all of that humidity before I poured it into the jar. And that will be our granola for the week, maybe even 2. The next thing I made was a tofu ricotta, which is so incredibly simple. It's just literally a brick of tofu with some lemon juice and some white miso paste. And I think that's pretty much it. You can add salt and pepper, obviously, but the main ingredients are just the tofu, a bit of miso paste, and some lemon juice. And I just whiz that up in a blender until it's really nice and smooth and pop that in the fridge. I put some minced garlic and chopped onions into a pot with a lot of cumin and a bit of turmeric and coriander and some lentils. And I also added a bit of Bragg soy aminos to the pot and some texturized vegetable protein. And I let that come to a boil, and then I simmered that on the back as well until the lentils were tender and the TVP was completely hydrated. While those were simmering, I also put some Romano beans in the Instant Pot and let those cook so that I could use those to stuff my tortillas later. I also put a pot of brown rice on the back burner to simmer as well. I then sliced up some onions and garlic for my kitchen sink casserole. And basically a kitchen sink casserole is just a casserole made out of whatever we have in the fridge and in the pantry. And it's not very well planned out. And the name comes from kitchen sink soup, which for those of you who are not familiar, means a soup that you made with everything in the kitchen except for the kitchen sink. Although the water did come from the kitchen sink. Anyways, I sliced onions and chopped garlic, and I had a cabbage that I wanted to use up, so I chopped that up as well. I sliced some mushrooms and I grated some carrots, and I sauteed the onions and garlic and some fennel seeds. And then when I could start to smell the fennel, I threw in my cabbage, and then when that started to soften a tiny bit, I added the rest of my veg and also some frozen corn because we had a bit of that left in the freezer too. I poured the lentil mixture into the bottom of the dish, and the next layer was the vegetables, and then I made some mashed potatoes and seasoned them with dill and put that on the top of the casserole dish and popped that in the fridge. I had a leftover mix of sweet potatoes and onions and other vegetables in the freezer that I wanted to use, so I decided to make rice and the beans, the Romano beans, to stuff tortillas with. And I also chopped up a bunch of kale, and I sauteed the frozen veg and the kale together in a pan, and then I added the Romano beans and the brown rice, and then I just rolled that mixture up in tortillas and put those in the fridge. We bought a box of bulk ginger that I had huge plans for. I'm not even going to tell you what they were. It's a secret, but I wasn't able to get to it in time. So I quickly sliced up some of the ginger to put into the fridge, and I also grated some of it up and put that in a different jar. And then I attempted to shave some ginger. I mean, I literally did shave it, but I did a horrible job. I really need to just overcome my fear of a mandolin. I need to just get myself a mandolin. They just terrify me, but it would make my job so much easier if I could just, find a good one that I'm not afraid of and a very thick glove. Anyway, this works much better with younger ginger, but it's still tasty if you let it sit long enough in the vinegar and sugar mixture that I heated up on the stove and poured over the ginger. And that one did not go into the freezer. That one went into the refrigerator. I've been experimenting with blood orange oil cakes because I have made them in the past. I made a couple last year and I loved them so much. And so I've been trying to recreate the one that I had last year because I can't find the recipe anywhere. But I'm not actually going to tell you how I made this one because I recorded a whole video just to share with you. So I will show you probably next week. I set aside most of the tomato sauce that I was simmering for a lasagna that my girlfriend is going to put together later this week. But I put some of it aside also so that for dinner we could have giant beans or elephant beans with tomato sauce. They're my favorite beans, and I love them with Mediterranean greens. So good. By the time I was done with all of my meal prep, my starter was perfect. It was so happy and bubbly and ready to use. So I made a loaf of bread and I left that on the counter overnight to bake first thing in the morning. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you found it inspiring. And if you have any requests or recommendations, suggestions, questions, comments, please just leave a comment below. I love hearing from you. If you are a Patreon subscriber, thank you a million times over for believing in the work that I'm doing, for contributing to it, and helping to make this channel possible. If you are someone who would like to work one-on-one with me for naturopathy or nutrition, there is a booking link in the description below. I'll be back very, very soon, and in the meantime, take really good care of yourselves. Bye.